What's going on, guys? Jacoborth back here with another video of Jacob's Life in Vegas, coming to you guys with another interview here for the election season here in the state of Nevada, to encourage all of you that live here in Nevada to go out and vote this election season. I have another candidate here running for office with me. Folks, this is Bob Beers, and he's running to be the state treasurer. So Bob is no stranger to being in the political realm. He is a certified public accountant, so he handles lots of money. And he's running right now to actually be handling the state's money for the next, is it 4 years, correct?
4-year term. The treasurer's primary duty is to make sure that the state doesn't bounce checks.
Good.
People don't think about state government that way, but states also, just like people, have to worry about not bouncing checks.
Okay.
So we have a certain amount of money, about 3 months worth of our monthly average spending that we have in cash on hand, and that gets invested in short-term investments.
Okay.
And then we have a little bit in long-term investments. Quite a bit of debt that we have to manage, make sure that the mortgages get paid on time.
Right.
And in the middle is today's cash flow for this month. We have to make sure that we don't bounce any checks.
Okay.
In comes the tax revenue, out goes mostly paychecks. That's what government mostly is people.
Right.
The treasurer is the custodian of cash and assets and make sure we don't bounce checks.
Okay, good. So you're going to be managing, you get elected as treasurer. How much money are you going to be managing?
It depends on the month because our tax revenue doesn't all come in 1/12 per month. And so the amount of actual cash on hand varies up and down. Billions of dollars, quite honestly. It's a pretty big number with some zeros behind it, but I've been a certified public accountant for 30 years. I've been functioning in the Treasury Department of government and in business for those years.
Jeez.
On the government side, I was the vice chairman of the Senate Finance Committee in Carson City during the time that I served in the legislature. That was a few years ago, and I've also served on the Las Vegas City Council for 5 years. So I have a passion for public service. I publish my cell phone, 702-592-8822. I answer it myself and troubleshoot problems with government for people.
Jeez, that's that's impressive to be that accessible.
In years of putting my cell phone out there as a public servant, I have never had anybody abuse it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's definitely good to know.
Interestingly enough. Of course, I run for boring stuff like treasurer and technical jobs where you got a job to do.
Yeah, dealing with all kinds of large numbers that you have to handle.
Yep.
Okay, so in your role, as treasurer, you're going to be, we actually talked about this briefly off camera before, you have to work with the controller.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about consolidating the treasurer and the controller. Every so often we'll get someone propose a bill in Carson City that does that. And here's the problem. In the study of managing other people's money, which is an actual area of study, you don't want to have the same person assigned to be the custodian of your stuff as counts your stuff and tells you how much stuff your custodian has. You want different people to do that. At least now you got to have the two people working together towards nefarious ends for a bad outcome, right? And this is all under the umbrella of internal controls. And so in that scheme of things, the treasurer is the custodian of assets, and the controller is the guy that counts it up and tells everyone how much is there. As the Constitution was originally envisioned by Nevada's founding fathers, which were mostly a bunch of miners up in Virginia City back in the day, they didn't have a controller in the original draft of the Constitution. That office didn't exist. It was only when they got together and talked about it in committee that they decided to create this office of controller. And they didn't split the duties off from the treasurer, as people might think. They actually split the duties off from the Secretary of State. So they are two very different functions, and it's all part of managing other people's money without losing it or without having bad things happen to it.
Okay. As a treasurer, are you able to, when it comes to managing money for the state, are you able to allocate money that is going to be spent in different areas of the state?
I hate a question that I can just answer yes, no, but the answer is no.
Okay.
It is technically the governor proposes a budget, and the legislature then approves the budget. And the legislatively approved budget tells us how much money is going to go to schools, how much money is going to go to welfare, how much money is going to go to this function or that function.
Nice.
That's all a legislative function. So the mechanics of that, it's all about to kick off here in about 3 months.
Yeah.
In early January, whoever the governor will be, will hold a State of the State speech.
Right.
And that is the day that they unveil their budget proposal. Now, budget proposal is a stack of paper, probably about that tall stack, right?
Wow.
Sheet-wise, it's a huge document. That budget is then going to be handed over to the legislature, which 2 weeks later, in the beginning of February, will start meeting.
Right.
Now, the legislature today is made up of 63 citizens who are running around Nevada, doing their life, going to soccer games with their kids or whatever they're doing with their lives.
Right.
But come the start of February of 2019, they all get called to Carson City, and for the next 4 months, that's one of the primary things they're going to do is approve the budget. Fully 1/3 of the members work on the details of this budget for 4 months straight, about half day, plus their staff that's working on it the whole time.
Wow.
So it's quite the elaborate check and double check process. One, interestingly enough, that's absent from Clark County. Now, Clark County's government is nearly as big financially as the state government.
Oh, really?
But they don't have any of this checking and double checking and public input into their budgeting process,
Okay.
interestingly enough. So that's how the state's budget is determined. Once the session is over after 4 months, the legislators go back home, and the treasurer and the controller and the secretary of state and the attorney general and the governor and the constitutional offices proceed to carry out the instructions that the legislature left behind.
Gotcha. So if people want more money spent on schools or on fixing the highways,
Actually,
don't get mad at you.
This is the time right now that people should call up the people who are running for the legislative seats in their neighborhood. And this is very much a neighborhood level thing. To put it in context, there's 2.2 million people in Clark County, something like that.
Yeah.
And probably of the 42 seats in the assembly, I suspect something like 30 of them are located in Clark County. So it is a very neighborhood thing, and you have every right, in fact, I would suggest you have a citizen duty to reach out to the people who are running for assembly in your neighborhood and ask them what their opinion is on this thing or that thing. Some people are concerned about spending more in this category and less in this category. Other people are concerned about spending more in both categories, and they don't care about where the money comes from.
Yeah.
Other people are concerned about where the money comes from. So whatever you think, you should be reaching out to your legislative candidates and interviewing them right now, because if you vote by mail, those absentee ballots are going in the mail this week, and early voting starts in the middle of October. So the time is now. And your neighborhood legislative candidate is who you need to be talking to about taxes and spending at the state level. And that includes schools and, for the most part, roads. Okay.
So thank you for that, for breaking it down for people, because, I'm sure a lot of people are not familiar with.
If you call in Clark County, 702-455-VOTE, VOTE, that gets you to the Clark County Election Department. Pretty simple phone call, and they can tell you who your legislator is and who the candidates are that are running for your neighborhood legislative seat.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so you go directly to them,
election department, and they're prepared to answer those questions. Who the people are. They can't tell you what the people think.
Right.
They just tell you, here's who it is, here's their phone number. You got to call them up and ask them your hard questions.
Yeah, you can start asking where they think the money should be spent.
Yep. Okay. Or whatever it is. I mean, the government is an amazing thing, and it does an awful lot, and a lot of people get exposed to it. And maybe some people's issue is shorter lines at DMV. Whatever it is, now is the time to reach out to those legislative candidates and decide which one you're going to support.
Okay. Well, do you have, just off of your own opinion, say you become the treasurer of the state, are there a few things that, you would like to see done immediately here in Nevada? Do you have some things on your mind you would like to see?
Well, the treasurer has an ongoing agenda with the legislature that I'll be working on as well. But I think that the current treasurer has done a pretty good job keeping the office oriented correctly. So I'll inherit a pretty clean operation to the best of my knowledge. And like I said, the primary job is to make sure you don't bounce checks. Well, if you succeeded in doing that this month, guess what? Your reward is you got to do it next month. And that's how that job goes. That job never ends. I do have some ideas of things. One of the things that treasurers may be able to get involved with is what I call the piles of cash problem.
Okay.
The piles of cash problem. When marijuana was sold illegally, the black marketeers who sold it were able to take their cash and put it in the bank. It worked pretty good. The problem now is it's legitimized at the state level and it's licensed, regulated, monitored. Those guys, it turns out, can't do anything with their cash. So their cash that their customers buy marijuana with ends up piling up in a room somewhere, and they try to pay their bills with it as best they can, but they're denied access to normal banking services. I see that not as a problem for the marijuana industry. I see that as a problem for the rest of the world, because we're the ones who are going to suffer when someone comes along with a rented armored car and decides to knock over the neighborhood room where piles of currency is kept. That's a public safety problem. I'd like to find a solution. It may involve the treasurer's office. No one's quite sure. California next door, their treasurer convened a working group, and they worked for 6 months, released about a 40-page report, and it concluded, that we can't quite tell if there's anything we can do here. Here's some ideas. The legislature then proceeded in California to work those ideas pretty hard for 6 months, and in the end dropped them all because they were not viable. The problem is the federal government needs to take the sentence out of federal law that basically says marijuana is the worst thing since the devil.
Right.
The old-fashioned federal law. That needs to get cleared up, and then bankers presumably would be free to do banking. So that's one area where the Treasury has some involvement. The other area is several programs in conjunction with the federal government and the state government together that are designed to promote what I'd call fiscal literacy, financial literacy, money smarts amongst the population. That's part of it, and the other part of that same job is to promote saving for a kid's post-high school education. It doesn't have to be college. It can be beauty school. It can be real estate school. It's fine. It doesn't have to be college, but you got to plan ahead. You got to put some money aside, because when that youngster is going through their educational experience, they're not able to earn money to pay rent. So it's an expensive proposition. Save money today for that knowledge that you'll need down the road, and you'll be better off. You'll have a better life. I have attended UNLV and UNR and graduated from Clark High School in the public school district here. So I think if anybody can promote the value of education, that I'm the guy. Yeah,
that's great. So it's good to hear some of the things that are on your mind that you might like to see some change with. Here in the state of Nevada, as I understand, a big part of our revenue comes from sales tax. So the biggest parts, obviously, because Nevada depends a lot on tourism. So a lot of tourism will help us, pay that tax. Thank you to everybody who comes and visits. But if we ever have to, borrow money, if we ever have to take on debt, where are some of the places that Nevada will get the money from? Like, who do we want to be usually owing money to if we borrow?
When Nevada's governments, which includes both the cities and the counties and the state, borrow. These days, it's an institutional borrow on Wall Street. And so you're usually borrowing from somebody's pension fund, from somebody's savings for their old age that's in their 401k. So the managers of those 401ks include in the things they invest assets in government debt. And so when Nevada borrows, that's who it's borrowing for. It's a faceless institutional investor that's probably got the money together from a whole bunch of people planning for their retirement. That's the most common.
So that's
a good question.
Well, that's one people probably want to know about. Everybody who's here in the state paying taxes probably like to know where their money's going, and if we don't have enough money, they probably want to know why we don't have enough. And
when governments borrow, now we get down to philosophy, right? When governments borrow, in my opinion, it should be the same kind of deal when you borrow. And you borrow to avoid paying rent. So typically, most people's first borrow after a credit card thing, which could have started out as, gee, I can rent this stereo for $25 a month, or they'll give me a credit card and I can buy it for $100. That's a good deal, right? So when people really borrow big, it's because they're avoiding rent. They want to live somewhere, and if they rent it, they pay this much.
Yeah.
Times 12 is this much per year. Times 30 years is an astronomical figure. And they compare that with, what if I borrowed some money today, bought that piece of real estate, paid off my mortgage, paid interest on my borrowing. Now, how much money do I spend over 30 years? And it turns out it's a lot less.
If you buy.
And so if you borrow to buy. Right. And so most borrowing, in my opinion, by government should be to avoid rent. It should be so that we can build the Sawyer building down at Washington and Las Vegas Boulevard South, or North rather, instead of renting a similarly sized building.
Yeah.
And so that's primarily, by the way, what most local government and state debt is here in Nevada. You can contrast that with the federal government, where you see them borrowing every year just to make payroll. That's not a very sustainable model, and that's frankly why a lot of us are frustrated with Washington.
No, that's definitely understandable. Yeah, nobody likes to see the debt keep rising.
No,
doesn't bode well for the future.
And especially if you're spending it on payroll rather than a fixed asset that helps you avoid rent down the road.
Okay, well this has been pretty good. You've been down to giving us a lot of great information in a short time. Is there anything else you would like to say? I mean, as far as your
Jacob, I could go on like this for hours, man.
I figured that you're very comfortable on camera. You've done a great job. But I mean, as far as your campaign and how you feel about the
look,
state of Nevada.
I believe that I'm the best candidate for this job because I have been involved in the Treasury function in business and government over 30 years' time. I did 5 legislative sessions, served on the Finance Committee. In fact, as the vice chair in the Senate of the Finance Committee, which heard over the budget. I did 5 years on the Las Vegas City Council in the private sector. I have started and sold several businesses. Well, managed to sell 2 of the several that I started, we'll put it that way. So I've had some business success, and I just enjoy talking about government. I see government as the collective effort of all of us, and I believe everyone has a little responsibility to help make government go better. I believe government is really susceptible to too much good intentions. Government is a clumsy beast. And it's a terribly inefficient beast. And so we really only want to unleash it on certain tasks once we determine that that's really the only way to get it done is through government. But therefore, it's necessary, and we need to always think about better ways to do it, and if there's improvements or just different things we could do that would improve the outcomes. So I love talking about this stuff. I love the public service aspect of it, and like I said, I'm trying to be as accessible as possible. Google my name, my cell number, and my email come up. That's how we got in touch.
Exactly.
And I will return your call. Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
702-592-8822.
Cool. Well, yeah, you guys can call them right there. I'll put that information down below. What is your website if you want to find more information? I'll put that down below as well.
Beersfornevada.org. So my last name, Beers, number 4, Nevada spelled out, .org, not .com.
Cool. All right, well, thank you for doing this interview, Mr.
I don't have any, but we have a great bumper sticker. It says, "We like beers, vote responsibly." If you'd like one of those, give me a call. I'll mail you a copy.
Cool. You guys want your bumper sticker from Mr. Beers here and support his campaign. He'll definitely do that for you. So I'll put a contact info for him down below, guys. Thank you, Mr. Beers, for coming on here. You've been absolutely great. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, I encourage you guys to all go out and vote this season. Like I do every couple years, I want you guys to go out and vote and become active, in your local community, at the city, county, and state level, okay? So thanks for watching, guys.
November 6th is Election Day. Early voting starts middle of October.
He's on it, isn't he? Alrighty, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.